Hello everyone, it's Magic Dave here again after a few months since the last video. I've been working on heaps of stuff. I was actually aiming to get a trailer done, and that's sort of what I was heading for that and working on mammoths and stuff last time. But it just got to the point where I wasn't really, I felt like it wasn't the right direction that I was taking, that the focus on just trying to make this all look good and sort of have this more advanced stuff wasn't actually heading in the right direction for the game. I just sort of lost motivation for a bit there as a result of that. So when I actually sort of gave up on the trailer and decided it's not actually that important, what's important is I get this game done, suddenly I was really motivated again. I sort of split everything out into these different to-do lists and organized everything into what I wanted to do before early access, and actually made the decision that this game is going to definitely be going into early access early next year. So I've sort of got a mark in the sand to work towards, and motivation levels are pretty high again, so it's all good. I've been doing heaps and heaps of little things, just little tweaks and usability improvements. You can see down there, we've got tips now that sort of say how you can do various things and introduce you to all the game systems. There's lots of little UI improvements. We've got all sorts of changes to the way that things, when you click on Sapiens, how you interact with them, even these have changed. We've got tabs all through here. I'll go through a little bit of that stuff. There's a few interesting things in amongst it all, so I'll go over that shortly. Anyway, this is just a little test world that I was working on. The tree circle I thought was an interesting idea. Now that I've added mammoths, they're actually a bit of a threat. If you get too close, then they will kind of charge at you and end up, they can actually injure the sapiens now. So that was something that I worked on after the last video, sort of one of the first things I did. So all of the mammoth behaviors and everything are all really good too. They're sort of migrating through past your village, and I've got that working for all the different, for the chickens and the alpacas as well. So, and it's all really nicely tidied up so that I can quite easily add a whole lot of new types of animals and things. So what I've been working on the last couple of weeks is the animations and models for the sapiens themselves. I decided it was probably time to work on clothing. Clothing is probably one of the largest things that I have left to do that just absolutely has to be in the game before early access. So I started working on a little bit of clothing, adding a bit of sort of a cloak, and I realized that the models, for one thing, they weren't really done. There were issues with the animations, which I'll show you in a second, but also I really needed to have more than one weight per vertex, or more than one bone assigned per vertex in the model, just to allow things to stretch a bit better. I've done a lot of work on the models, just sort of redoing all of the vertex positions and stuff. Not really changing the look so much, but just allowing the animations to work better and just rigging everything up a bit better. So I thought I'd actually show you how the models have evolved over the course of Sapiens, and what my approach was and what I've learnt over the last few years trying to animate human models, because I thought that could be quite interesting for people. So I just wanted to show you this really old video. This was one of the first videos that I recorded when I had added the sapien model. And this was actually probably this is probably the second iteration where I actually split out the vertices. So as you can see, I was aiming for something quite different. I had this flat shaded look, and I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know when I was, I'd hardly used Blender at all before I started Sapiens, and I'd never done character animation. I'd never actually modeled a human kind of character. So I was just sort of learning and doing my best. And this is what I had. Now, what I was aiming for was very different, as I said. And so what I decided to do here was just, when I set up the whole GLTF file format importer, I just allowed for one bone to be assigned per vertex. So I'll show you this model in a second. Here they are animating, and you can see it's very, very simple kind of stuff. They're just going linearly between simple kind of keyframes and stuff. Now I've dug through and found the model on GitHub as it was. So this is the original model, and this is actually, you can see there's no seams there on this. So each vertex is still assigned to one bone, but they can stretch as they rotate. And you can see issues with it already. You can see that there's quite a large point here because this vertex has rotated around the bone position and kind of caused some strange artifacts on the outside of the mesh. So when I thought about how I was going to solve this, given the look at the time, I actually thought I could go in and change it to look like this, which is what you just saw in that last video. So that actually meant that each of these were quite discrete objects. So each part of the bone had one sort of thing that was assigned to it, and things could not stretch at all. They could just move as chunky objects. Now, I actually think that this could work, and probably there are plenty of games that have done it like this, and for the style, it was probably okay. It could have worked out okay. But then what happened soon after that, this is just when I was sort of learning a little bit more about how models should look. That's actually a bone that you can see sticking out of his head. So I sort of improved the look a little bit, but I still had issues with how they were animating and how things looked. And when I then decided to go with the smooth shaded model, I basically kept everything the same, but I had to go back to that thing where it stretched the vertices over. So when I went to the smooth shading mode, I basically converted the old mesh over to this by just sort of changing the way the normals are rendered, and then I tweaked things a little bit to make it look okay. The issue though is you can still see with the shoulders that they cause these little dimples and things, and that gets even more pronounced if I rotate like that. You've got a real issue there where you can really see that these are two discrete things and it's not blending nicely. And a lot of my early animations also rotated in strange ways that weren't possible. I found that if you twist things, that can cause kind of the worst problems. So twists are very hard to deal with, and you can't model and sort of rig and animate in a totally separate way. You can't make a beautiful looking model and then just suddenly rig it magically to animate correctly. You have to actually think about where the joints are going to be and how each triangle interacts with each joint as you go, and that's a difficult process to learn, and it's taken me a while, but I'm getting there with that. Yeah, so some of my issues were actually that things like with this, this is quite a difficult thing to deal with, but I wasn't dealing with it well either. Like I wasn't actually rotating this leg correctly. It had a lot of twist as well as the bends, and it just wasn't really working that well. So now we get to the most recent model. Now this is actually the animations file. So I've got a different file for the body, for the head, and for the animations. And then I've got I've got the female animations, the children animations, the different bodies for the different sort of pregnant women versus non-pregnant women, all sorts of things like that. So it's certainly become a lot more complex to manage and things. But I think, as an indie working alone on this, I've made a lot of compromises to make sure that I can actually manage this content. And one of those compromises is actually that these are all individual keyframes all stacked right next to each other. And I don't have multiple files, like a file for each animation, or I don't split this out into actually trying to individually animate between some things animating and some things not, and different interpolations, all that kind of stuff. I actually do a lot of that procedurally and in the code. So this is purely just a bunch of keyframes, and all of the animation happens in engine using scripts and things, and that is working really well for me. I think that was a good choice. So if we go back to that crouch animation now, there's still issues. It's still not perfect, but it is better. It's all improved. The shoulders and arms are better. If I maybe grab this and rotate like I was doing before, you can see if I go too far, yes, it dimples, but it's got quite a lot more movement before it starts to look bad now. And that a lot of that comes down to the way that the triangles are positioned, but it also comes down to the fact that I've now allowed for 2 weights per vertex. So this is showing the weights that are assigned to each vertex. So the red areas are assigned to back and the blue areas are assigned to something else. And that's just another way of sort of showing you what's going on. And you sort of have to go through all the different poses and make sure that everything bends in ways that are okay and that things don't sort of overlap each other too much. And it's really just kind of a matter of tweaking things as much as I can. Now, there are experts out there that are dedicating their entire careers to this one task of just how do you assign vertices to bones, and how best to animate rigs to make them look natural and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's beyond what I'm doing, and if you want to become an expert at that, then you're watching the wrong video. But I just wanted to show you sort of how I've approached it, and maybe it's approachable for you too. And you can get reasonable results even if you're not an expert. Okay, so as I was saying, the actual animations are defined in the script. Now, this is that script. We've got 900 lines for all of the Sapien animations so far. This is a list of all the keyframes, and then I specify how long the keyframes are. I can specify various ease in, ease out kind of curves, give it a bit of random variance so that every time it's just a little bit different. I can also assign triggers. So for that eat trigger, if I find that that's just a function and it can do anything, and this is playing some sounds. We can also emit particles and or do whatever. So that means that these events actually time with the actual animations, and it's kind of tricky, I guess, because I can't preview the animations without actually being in the game. I can't see them in Blender. That's probably the only downside to this. And for me, as a coder, I find it very easy to work with, and can be quite quick. I can just copy and paste one animation into another, and I can combine animations. See this one here. We've got the base, so there's various animations that they can do, like walking or sitting or standing, and I'm just procedurally combining those with the various carrying mechanisms or waving, so that they can do sort of two things at a time. So it's just overriding certain bones with certain animations over the top. So yeah, I guess that's all fairly technical, but I thought some of you might be quite interested in all of this. And there's also limits that I can specify, because the head is kind of this special case thing where they're looking around procedurally all the time, and so this is just saying don't roll your head too fast that it looks unnatural or strange. So that's what that's about. Anyway, so I guess the upshot of all of that is that the animations now look quite a lot smoother. I've redone the running animations again, and I'm thinking they look quite good, although, I sort of was even tweaking this last night, so chances are that when I look at this again in a month, I'll tweak it again. But I think that they're almost passable. They'll almost work. And yeah, as I said, I'm working on clothing shortly, and I'm quite looking forward to that as a mechanic. I think that's going to be quite good, and also just to add a bit more variety to all the models and stuff. But as far as what else I've worked on, I've been working a bit on the sort of tribe management screen. So we've got this now where you can see everything that everyone's sort of feeling and doing, and all the effects that they've got. We've got their skills sort of load. You can see who's got what skill, and you can jump to them from here and all that kind of stuff. The roles, we've got this panel here which sort of shows the roles from a tribe view, so you can see there's 6 people assigned to firelighting. Click on that, you can move people back and forward between here. You can even move everyone, say no one's allowed to light fires anymore. And you can see who's got various what they're already assigned to. Down here, what their skill level is in fire, so it makes sense for him to have fire lighting, and maybe some of these guys who are sort of halfway through it. So yeah, the balance has changed quite a lot. I was finding that testers weren't actually using this system. A lot of them were just letting it assign people automatically, because basically everyone was just assigned to everything and they just kind of got on with it. But that was not how I intended the game to be. I wanted that to be a core mechanic. So I've had to change it a little bit. So now as you could see with these, they can only have 5 roles. After that, that's it. So you have to start cancelling some of the earlier roles. We could go and look at him and say, we don't actually need him to be doing diplomacy. Maybe he'd be better off doing thatch building instead. And you can rename them, and you can sort of really get to know them a little bit better, and know who's doing what. And I think that's just much better balance now. So I'm feeling quite good about that. And then we have this new stats page as well. So you can actually say, look at population. Haze blowing this out, so we'll just turn that off. So you can see how things have changed over time. Now this world actually, it's only just started recording stats, so the graphs are very new. I've only just added that functionality, so this was an old world save. Okay, so I've just gone into this other test world, which actually has some stats from a bit longer ago. Because obviously the server actually has to record this information. It's not just magically recorded somewhere. So I've had to actually add that ability. So it's saving it into the database every time something changes. And I think, the database is fast enough, the server's fast enough that it's not really a performance problem. This then has to be sent over the network in multiplayer games. So every time you change one of these things, it's going to do a query off to the server, which looks up the database and sends things through. But I think, again, it's probably fine. This is interesting with the apples. There was an apple harvest, and then it's all declined again. And you can see branches. We sort of started getting branches here. I just love this stuff. I think it's going to be really interesting and quite a benefit to the game. So that's about all I have to talk about at the moment. There are other things going on in the background. Mammoth Hunting has come a long way and is actually, it's a viable way of getting meat and things, although it can be quite risky and you can lose sapiens attempting to do it. I'm not going to show you that right now. There's a few things like that I kind of don't want to spoil it. There's not really any need for me to show you all the advanced kind of game mechanics and all the content and everything. So, I'm probably going to sort of hold back on that stuff. But that's taking time too. And obviously all the just little tweaks and little optimizations, little usability improvements, and there's lots of things going on sort of behind the scenes. So anyway, I'll leave the video there for now. We will probably see you again in another few months. I'm just, finishing off all of the content and all of the little sort of gameplay mechanics and things, just doing a lot of bug fixing and tidying up over the next few months. My goal now is to have an early access build out for everybody early next year. Now, I'm a little bit flexible on that date, but not very flexible. It's going to be early next year to mid next year at the very latest. So it's just going to be a matter of when we get to that point, whatever state it's in, it's going to go out, and then I'm going to continue to work on it after that. So that's definitely the plan, and that's what I'm working towards. And everything's looking great. The to-do list is looking in good shape. The testers are just having a blast. We've had some have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours building amazing towns and stuff. So I'm amazed. It's great. I'm very, very happy with how things are turning out, and progress is still going really well. But less videos because ultimately I'm focused on making the game rather than being an amazing YouTuber. But I'm trying to keep you up to date, and I enjoy showing off progress now and then. So anyway, please once again wishlist on Steam if you haven't already, and we will see you again in the next devlog video.